Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I'm going to talk about an underrated show that I liked back 20 years ago, and I rewatched it fairly recently, and it still holds up pretty well to the point that I always kind of rewatch it every few years, that being Solty Rei. This was made in 2005 and 2006 by Gonzo, because you gotta say it like a Gonzo. And it succeeds at being like cyberpunkish crime thriller comedy stuff, kind of all wrapped all in one. Obviously the comedy stuff is going to take precedence a little bit too much sometimes, and you know, your interest in the show may or may not hinge on Solty herself as a main character, you know, because it's not doing anything that is like transcendent or anything like that. In terms of like cyberpunk shows, it's no Psychopaths or something. But if you like, I don't know, something like Dimension W or, you know, little or Copcraft, you know, cyberpunky stuff, crime drama stuff, that isn't like amazing, but I felt good about it, you know, and the fact that I can rewatch it and still enjoy it and sometimes get a laugh by some of the characters, even though where I'm going, it's a good sign, because I think some of it doesn't add up perfectly, but I still think there's enough here of a hook that I think people will like it. But if you haven't seen it, it's one of those things that I don't know how many people talk about it, but I felt it was good. But basically, we'll start at the beginning. Every episode for, I'd say, the first 10 or so talks about a calamity known as the Blast Fall. And, oh yeah, Darker Than Black has a similar setup too, but Darker Than Black is better than this. Anyway, but if you've seen cyberpunkish shows like that where a world calamity happens or a virus or something happens, but it's cyberpunkish and whatnot, if you like that sort of thing, this is kind of in that wheelhouse. Anyway, something known as the Blast Fall happened. And in this city, there is this shell, the Aurora shell. And I don't know if they specify the entire world. The odds are it is the entire world, but everything is kind of centralized in this city hub, in this world, where, thanks to the Blast Fall, stuff like prosthetics and cybernetic parts and things like that are put into effect. They're known as resemble parts, but they're very fucking expensive. So you end up getting kind of this classist mentality. It's nothing crazy, but it's there enough that you get the idea of why some of the main characters are the way they are, and you know why some criminals end up the way they do. And given that the setup of the show is very bounty hunter centric and crime drama centric and shit like that, it's important enough to know that the Blast Fall exists for a reason. They go into that a lot more, say, at the end of the show, like the last 4 or 5 episodes, when they really need to kind of hammer that stuff home and, like, oh my god, this person you met is actually involved in it. Ooh, you know, stuff like that. So yeah. But I would say this show kind of goes in, like, 3 phases. I like the beginning most. Setting things up without too many stakes, but realizing that there's still kind of this in one of the main characters' backstories before stuff gets revealed, so that you can kind of know where things start to go. And it centers around Roy Revant, voiced by Chris Sabat, and he plays, imagine if you heard this before, a Chris Sabat character playing a curmudgeon bounty hunter dude who's older and gruff and pissed off at the world and shit. I mean, go figure. I would say the only thing more crazy would be saying like John Swayze is a police officer. I mean, whatever. But anyway, but Roy is kind of despondent about things. He's kind of old school. but he has reasons for being like targeting who he does. And while he's going after criminals and taking bounty hunter jobs, he is looking for his daughter Rita, who disappeared in the blast fall. You get a lot of like subtle hints here and there as to who she could be, but that doesn't happen until like 7 or 8 episodes in. Until then, it's like she's got to be somewhere, and there's a lot of false alarms and things that are happening, and he just exists as a bounty hunter for Miranda Maverick, who's voiced by Stephanie Young. And Miranda was a friend and just kind of looks out for him because he's sometimes like, as he's the typical, I'm really fucking good at my job, but I'm a bit of a bending the rules kind of guy, so she keeps him working with jobs and shit, but she's she tries to just keep him from kind of going a little crazy. But Roy ends up finding in one of his jobs, he finds something like, I don't think he finds her in the trash, but I think it's one of those like he finds her in the middle of the street somewhere and then she wakes up. But she refers to Solty, voiced by Carrie Savage. And again, your interest in this show is going to vary depending on Solty, because she is the main character. And if you've seen Chobits and you like a character like Chi, if you could stomach that kind of character in a cybernetic crime drama comedy setting, that's basically Solty is half the time. Mostly. A lot more go-getter person, but people are evil and this is dumb, and but she has like moments of weakness and whatever, and there are darker moments in the show. One of my favorites is like midway through the show when things are starting to get way serious, and she goes and meets this guy named Will. I actually talked to Greg Ayers, who voiced him, and I think like either I brought him up because I was talking about side characters or characters that you're not the main, but you're kind of like 1 episode, 2 if you're lucky, and you get to do a little bit more and have fun. And I think he specifically mentioned Will as somebody he enjoyed playing as, because his voice is not really all that different, but just the way that it goes about. I don't want to really give anything away, but they do stuff in their like 2 episode arc, and Solty's kind of dealing with like personal issues, so that you kind of see that like early on she's just having fun. She just wants to be Roy's daughter, sort of. We'll get back to that in a minute, but she deals with shit that goes on midway through the show, and then Will picks her back up, but then she deals with even more shit. So she goes through a decent enough character arc of dramatic moments that, anything about like, oh my god, she's too chipper, and oh my god, she's, like that, again, she sounds like Chi, because Carrie Savage, her voice is very specific, and, it works. It worked for me greatly, but again, if you're not into that sort of character, this may not be the show for you, because she dominates the screen. But I think it's great because of that dichotomy of this super crazy powerful person who has and sorry, I'm just checking if rain was starting to seep into my recording. I can hear rain. It's raining and almost hail outside. Oh boy, this is fun. So I might get distracted. At least it's not traffic for once. Anyway, but Solty wakes up. We're getting back to episode 1 here. Wakes up. Roy finds her. Doesn't want anything to deal with her because curmudgeon. But she follows him. And she keeps following. And keeps following and keeps following. It turns out that she is being followed by RUC security. Members of something called Proceed. They're led by Ashley Lynx, who is voiced by Jason Liebrecht, who was Finney the Gardener in Black Butler. That's what I know him mostly from. That and Dark in the Black, a show that cost me $200 or $300 to buy, so I'm never gonna fucking watch it again. Thanks for nothing, Anaplex. Anyway, so So yeah, Ashley Links, does stuff, and he runs this organization known as RUC, and they kind of work as special military ops and secret service agents and shit, all girls, and because that's cool and shit. They have their own unique banter between each other, but the four girls in the group go around and they look for Solty and they look for Roy, and he's like, what the fuck is all this shit? And like messing with Miranda and her daughter and all this other crap. And then Roy is just like, all right, fine. Solty's bothering me. It's fine. I'll deal with this shit. I'll take her in as my daughter. So he adopts Solty. A couple episodes later, meet Rose Anderson, voiced by Colleen Klinkenbeard. And her whole thing is she's from an underworld of this city from the Blast Fall. People of have-nots, and basically just steal things, Robin Hood style. But, she shoots things and likes to steal things and steal stuff. And there's a poolside episode, because of course there's a poolside swimsuit episode. What kind of anime would this be if there wasn't a swimsuit episode? So she steals stuff, and that's one of her episodes, is just messing around while at this fucking poolside, and, tries to endear herself to Solty, who's very impressionable and naive and, looking to Roy, and it's like, do I really follow her or do I not, Roy? And Roy's just like, fuck this. Trying to stay out of it. So she spends like 5 or 10 episodes just trying to recruit Solty, because Solty is like impregnable and indestructible and just absolutely fucking massively powerful. And it's basically Cosmos with the voice of a teenager, or even a kindergartner. I don't know, but it's funny hijinks for a while. But then you start peeling back the layers and you start thinking, okay, there might be something more to Rose that meets the eye. So that's where the second half of the show goes. And I don't I like it, but I don't. There's like these instances where it seems that things get rushed too much. Like they're introducing things that, yeah, you could have introduced, and then, wait, why'd you take that left turn? Like episode 13 and 14, go off the rails really fucking fast. It doesn't seem like the show, it has centered around, it doesn't even give you time to just get used to things. Because sometimes plot twists and cool shit are good, but when you've already kind of established you're veering in a certain direction to kind of and just go a wholly different direction again really quickly is a bit of a mind fuck, because you want to establish things enough that, okay, I've lived with this situation enough that I want to be around it, or I want to be changed. The show never gets to the point where it's so into its own thing that you get kind of bored. And I think that's where the frustration midway through happens, is like, wait, this is happening? Why? What? Why is that happening? And then this happens, and then you get a couple good episodes with Solty and Will, and then they go kind of back and you do other things, and then you start establishing kind of the end goal with Rose and Ashley and the RUC and what's going to happen. But then you add in another thing. I've said at the end of most seasons recently, there is this 2-episode syndrome where they're trying to find the finale and they don't know when to fucking start it. So it seems like some things just come out of fucking nowhere, and some shows really suffer because you're trying to do that. Not so much because this was a 24 episode show. This wasn't, they had time to develop things, but it felt like it went one episode too long. They were building and building and building for about 5 to 7 episodes, like this guy's the big bad or this girl is the big bad and whatever, and then, all this shit is going south and it turns almost tragic, but then they add more into it, and they peeling back layers and answering questions. They do that, but then they go even a step further, and then they do the introducing the thing again, and it's just like, well, you could have ended with that guy and it would have been great. It was the Final Fantasy IX problem, where you could have just tied everything up into a little bow, but then you did, nope, that's the final boss. Alright. Fine. I mean, if you wanted an extra episode because you needed the extra episode, that's cool. But I didn't exactly want it, and I don't think it really answered anything I wasn't already expecting, and I just felt like the climactic moment happened. The denouement happened. I didn't need the extra episode. And the show, you know, I always kind of, whenever I rewatch it, I get to that, like, episode 23, knowing that there's an episode 24 that I don't really like, and I'm just like, you know, does it kill the show? No. It just feels like tacked on because it's not necessary. And I'm not saying it's out of nowhere. I'm saying that the resolution still doesn't really add anything else to the show that wouldn't have been serviced by just, you know, spending the episode just letting the characters breathe. Instead of doing that, they had one more, and they did one more add-on to really make the climactic moment climactic. It just, you know, for a show that I was like, it's pretty fucking good for what it is, you know, it's just sometimes it goes out of its way, it goes out of its way to veer out of the good vibes that it's making to do more, as if it's afraid to just stay the course. Not to the point where I don't enjoy it, and not to the point where you can't make heads or tails of things. Nothing about this is so off the wall. But there are those two instances at about the same time in both like halves of the show that it feels like you could have went this way and then you went a completely different direction, and it really frustrated me. So I can't like wholly say that this just stuck for me. But the episodes that I liked, I still liked, and I like a shit ton of them, and I think all the characters really do well for, you know, pretty cliche stuff. It's still enjoyable. So would I recommend Solty Rei? Yes, with the understanding that, you know, this may not be your cup of tea. If you're into Cyberpunk, sure. If you're into action comedy Cyberpunk, even better. If you're into Cyberpunk stuff with the with Chi from Chobits sort of as your main character, even better. If that's a turnoff, probably not. Are you gonna guess every single fucking thing that happens in the show? Probably. But I think it's enjoyable enough, and it got some laughs out of me, and got some good, you know, sad moments when it needed to, that I think everything still felt weighty, that it didn't feel like it was wasted. So even for what I said about a couple of weird zigzags, there's still something to recommend. But that'll do for this week. And let's see here. I will deal with that Discord notification later. I will talk this over instead. So we did Solty Rei. Alright. Oh, God. September 13th, Nier Automata, the anime and video game, all in one. And, oh boy, do I have a lot to talk about. Okay. Illusion of Gaia. I have much less to talk about with that one. October 11th, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. And October 25th, East 10 Nordics. And in between in those episodes, as usual, there's going to be the anime rundowns of the seasons. So that'll do it for today. Pretty quick in and out here with today's review. So I'll see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.